In 1885 Montana Territory, 3 mail-order brides arrive with high hopes for their new lives. But instead of finding their promised marriages, they each receive the same cruel rejection. Too poor to be suitable. Stranded in Silver Creek with nothing but their carpet bags and crushed dreams, these women face a harsh frontier, winter alone. That's when the Blackwood brothers enter their lives. These 3 rugged cowboys run the largest ranch in the territory. But they've never found brides who value hard work and honest hearts over money and status. As the brothers offer the women shelter and work at their ranch, something unexpected begins to blossom. Could these rejected brides find that being unsuitable led them exactly where they were meant to be? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sarah Mitchell's fingers traced the edges of her teacher's certificate, the parchment worn soft at the corners from countless readings. The morning sun, streaming through the Silver Creek Station's dusty windows, caught the gold leaf lettering. Boston Teachers College, 1883. 2 years of credentials, reduced to little more than kindling by a single letter of rejection. "Miss Mitchell," the stationmaster called, startling her from her reverie. "Telegraph came for you." His weathered face held a mixture of sympathy and discomfort as he handed her the paper. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded it. The message was brief, but devastating. "Position filled. Suitable candidate with better means found. Regret any inconvenience. H. Richardson, Denver." Sarah sank onto her trunk, the last remnant of her Boston life. Around her, Emma and Lucy sat with their own rejection notices, 3 dreams shattered in the space of a morning. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd left Boston to escape being judged by her modest means, only to find the frontier just as unforgiving. "We could try Billings," Emma suggested softly, her medical bag clutched close like a shield. "Surely someone there needs a teacher, a seamstress, and a nurse's assistant." Lucy, the youngest at barely 20, wiped away tears with the corner of her carefully mended shawl. "We barely had enough for these tickets. Billings might as well be the moon." Sarah straightened her spine, the way she'd done countless times before her classroom of students. "Then we find work here. We're educated. Women, surely." The station door swung open, cutting off her words. A man filled the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, his presence commanding attention without effort. His clothes spoke of honest work. Dusty boots, well-worn denim, a knife-sharp crease in his hat brim, but it was his eyes that caught Sarah's attention. Clear blue and keenly intelligent, taking in the scene before him with careful consideration. "Matthew Blackwood," he introduced himself, removing his hat. "Couldn't help but overhear. My brothers and I run the Double B Ranch outside town. We're looking for help with the books, some basic medical know-how for the hands, and someone handy with a needle." His gaze swept over their small group. "Might be we could help each other out." Sarah felt her heart skip, though whether from hope or wariness, she couldn't tell. She'd learned the hard way that offers that seemed too good to be true usually were. "That's very kind, Mr. Blackwood, but nothing kind about it," he interrupted, though gently. "It's business. Ranch needs help. You need work. Simple as that." He replaced his hat, touching the brim. "Stage leaves for the ranch in an hour if you're interested. Your choice, ladies." He turned and left as quietly as he'd arrived, leaving, the air somehow emptier in his wake. The 3 women looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. "Could be worse than Cowboys," Lucy ventured, a hint of her usual sparkle returning to her eyes. Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Better than begging letters home to our families." Sarah looked down at her teacher's certificate, then at the crumpled rejection telegram. The frontier had already proven it could break hearts as efficiently as any Boston drawing room, but something about Matthew Blackwood's straightforward offer rang true. Business, simple as that. No pretense, no false promises. She stood, smoothing her travel-worn skirts. "We have an hour to decide." But in her heart, watching Matthew Blackwood's broad shoulders disappear down the street, She suspected the decision had already been made. Emma Barrett clutched her leather medical bag closer as the wagon jolted along the rutted road to the Double B ranch. Inside, her small collection of tinctures and bandages clinked together. Meager supplies, but each one representing hours of careful study under Dr. Thompson's guidance back in Denver. Waste of a woman's time, her intended's mother had sneered. Examining the bag's contents, a proper wife needs embroidery skills, not knowledge of poultices. The memory still stung, but Emma lifted her chin. Those same wasteful skills had saved more than one life during her apprenticeship. Beside her, Sarah sat ramrod straight, while Lucy dozed against her shoulder. Matthew Blackwood drove the wagon, his younger brother Luke riding alongside on horseback. Emma found her gaze drawn to the younger Blackwood more often than she cared to admit. Where Matthew was all quiet authority, Luke had a restless energy about him, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. "Rattler!" Luke's warning came sharp and clear. The wagon jerked to a halt as a diamond-backed serpent slithered across their path. Emma's medical bag tumbled from her lap, spilling its contents. Luke was off his horse in an instant, helping her gather the scattered supplies. His hands were calloused but gentle as he handed her a bottle of witch hazel. "You know your medicines, miss." "Well enough," Emma replied cautiously, remembering her recent rejection. But Luke's expression held only genuine interest. "Good. Nearest doctor's 2 days' ride. Had a hand die last spring from an infected cut." His jaw tightened at the memory. Could have used someone with healing knowledge then. A commotion from the back of the wagon interrupted them. One of the horses had stepped wrong, spooked by the snake. The wagon tilted precariously. "Everyone down," Matthew ordered, but Emma was already moving. She'd seen that particular scared horse dance before, knew what was coming. She grabbed Lucy's arm, pulling her clear just as the wagon lurched. Luke's strong hands steadied them both, while Matthew calmed the horses with quiet words and a firm hand. "Quick thinking," Luke said, still holding her elbow. His eyes met hers with new respect. "You've got good instincts." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. "Years of clinic work. You learn to read the signs." "Clinic work?" His eyebrows rose. "Where?" "Denver. I assisted Dr. Thompson for 3 years." She waited for the familiar dismissal, the subtle stepping back that usually followed such admissions. Instead, Luke grinned. "Well, now that's a stroke of luck. We've got 30 hands at the Double B, most of them more reckless than smart. Reckon you'll earn your keep quick enough." The wagon secured, they resumed their journey. But something had shifted in the air between them. Emma felt Luke's occasional glances like gentle touches, warming her in ways the Colorado sun never had. "Tell me about your work with Dr. Thompson," he said as they crossed a shallow stream, his horse keeping pace with her side of the wagon. "What's the worst case you handled?" So she told him about the miner with the crushed leg, the midnight, childbirth during a blizzard, the little boy who'd swallowed lie. Luke listened intently, asking sharp questions that revealed his own practical knowledge of frontier medicine. "Learned the hard way," he explained. "Out here you either figure things out or people die, but proper training." He shook his head admiringly. "That's worth more than gold." Emma's hand strayed to her bag, remembering the sneering rejection she'd received just days ago. "Not everyone sees it that way." Luke's expression hardened. "Then they're fools who've never held a dying man's hand." His voice softened. "Their loss is our gain, Miss Barrett." The Double B ranch appeared on the horizon, sprawling, well-maintained, and humming with activity. Emma saw corrals full of horses, bunkhouses for the hands, and a main house that spoke of simple prosperity. Not the genteel life she'd imagined when answering a marriage advertisement, but somehow right. "Welcome home," Luke said quietly, and Emma found herself believing him. Lucy Thomas unfolded her prized quilt in the fading light of the ranch house's sitting room. Her fingers traced the intricate stitching, tiny flowers and vines that had earned her a place at Hartford's finest dressmaker's shop. Fat lot of Good that had done her when her intended's family discovered she was just a seamstress, not the daughter of wealth they'd assumed from her delicate needlework. That's beautiful work. The quiet voice startled her. James Blackwood, the youngest of the brothers, stood in the doorway. He was leaner than his siblings, with artist's hands that seemed at odds with his ranch clothes. Like her, he had the look of someone used to living in the shadow of older siblings. "Thank you," Lucy replied, fighting the urge to hide the quilt. "It's just something I made to pass the time on the journey." James moved closer, studying the pattern with genuine interest. "Just something. Miss Thomas, I've seen wealthy ladies in Denver who'd pay a fortune for work half this fine." Lucy felt her cheeks warm. "You've been to Denver?" "Now and then. Someone has to handle the business side of things while Matt and Luke play cowboy." His smile was self-deprecating, though I suspect they'd say I'm just avoiding real work. "There's nothing unreal about creating beautiful things," Lucy said firmly, then blushed deeper at her boldness. But James's eyes lit up. "Exactly. He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Would you like to see something?" Without waiting for an answer, he pulled a folded paper from his vest pocket. Lucy gasped softly as he smoothed it out. The sketch showed a woman, Sarah, she realized, reading by the wagon during their journey. Every detail was perfect, from the worry line between her brows to the way she held her teacher's certificate. "You're an artist," Lucy breathed. James quickly folded the sketch away. "Don't tell my brothers. They think I just keep the ledgers." "Why hide it?" "Same reason you tried to hide your quilt just now." His understanding smile touched something in her heart. "It's easier than explaining why you love something that others think is useless." Lucy looked down at her quilt, then back at James. "Maybe we've both been explaining to the wrong people." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the distant sound of cattle and the crackle of the sitting-room fire. James cleared his throat. "Miss Thomas, Lucy, the ranch needs someone to maintain the hands, clothes, make repairs, that sort of thing. But if you wanted to do more, make things like this." He gestured to the quilt. "Well, Silver Creek's growing. Lots of folks coming in with money to spend on beautiful things." Lucy felt hope flutter in her chest. "You really think there'd be interest?" "I know there would be. The mercantile owner's wife was just complaining that she has to order everything from Denver." He grinned. "Of course you'd need someone who knows the business side of things. Someone good with numbers and negotiations. Someone like you." Lucy surprised herself by teasing. James's grin widened. "We could help each other. You create, I sell. Split the profits." His expression grew serious. "A real business partnership. No charity, no pity. Just two people who understand the value of making beautiful things." Lucy looked at her quilt again, seeing not just the pattern, but possibilities. A shop in town, perhaps. Orders from fancy Denver ladies. A chance to prove that being just a seamstress could mean something more. Partners. James held out his hand. Lucy took it, noting how his artist's fingers matched her seamstress's calluses. Partners. Neither of them mentioned how long their hands remained clasped, or how natural it felt when they finally let go. Dawn broke over the Double B ranch in streaks of gold and amber. Sarah stood at the kitchen window, watching ranch hands saddle their horses in the misty morning light. The ranch deed lay open on the table before her. Matthew had given it to her along with the account books, trusting her to understand the ranch's history as well as its finances. 1865, she murmured, touching the faded date. Their father filed it right after the war. With nothing but determination and 50 borrowed dollars, Matthew's voice came from behind her. He stood in the doorway, already dressed for the day's work. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. I'm just surprised you're trusting me with this." Sarah gestured to the deed and ledgers. Matthew poured himself a cup of coffee. "Way I see. Trust has to start somewhere." The kitchen gradually filled with life. Emma arrived, medical bag in hand, ready to organize the ranch's rudimentary infirmary. Lucy and James huddled over breakfast, discussing plans for her sewing business. Luke strode in, announcing that one of the hands had already managed to need Emma's services, a cut that needed stitching. "Barely sunrise and already earning your keep," Luke teased as Emma gathered her supplies. His admiring gaze followed her out the door. Sarah watched the easy interaction, noting how naturally the three women fit into the ranch's rhythm. The Blackwood brothers weren't the polished gentlemen they'd expected to marry, but there was something refreshing about their straightforward nature. "Tell me about your father," Sarah said to Matthew as they reviewed the books. "He built all this from nothing?" Matthew's eyes grew distant. "Civil War veteran with more dreams than dollars. Banks wouldn't lend to him, said ranching was too risky, but he believed in the land, in what it could become." He smiled slightly. "Sounds familiar, doesn't it?" Sarah thought of three women, rejected for their lack of means, but rich in determination. "Very familiar. Father passed 10 years ago," Matthew continued, "left us the ranch and his philosophy. Judge people by their character, not their circumstances." He met Sarah's eyes. "Guess some folks never learn that lesson." The morning progressed with a flurry of activity. Sarah discovered years of creative bookkeeping that had kept the ranch afloat through tough times. Emma's infirmary began to take shape, her skilled hands bringing order to chaos. Lucy's quick needle repaired 3 torn shirts before noon, earning grateful thanks from the hands. "You're all settling in well," Matthew observed during lunch, "almost like you were meant to be here." "Don't go getting sentimental on us, brother," Luke called from the doorway, but his soft look toward Emma betrayed his own feelings. James added another piece of wood to the stove. "Funny how the worst disappointments can lead to the best outcomes." Lucy ducked her head, smiling. "Very funny indeed." Sarah studied the deed again, seeing beyond the legal language to the story it told, of faith, hard work, and the courage to believe in possibilities. Not so different from their own story, unfolding in unexpected ways. The day ended as it began, with golden light painting the ranch in warm hues. But now the house felt different, more like home, less like a temporary shelter. 3 women, who'd arrived with nothing but broken dreams, had found something stronger than rejection, purpose, respect, and maybe, just maybe, the beginnings of love. Matthew found Sarah still at the kitchen table, finalizing the day's accounts. "You don't have to finish those tonight." "I know," she smiled up at him, "but I want to. This ranch, it's special." "Yes," he said softly, his eyes never leaving her face. "It is." Emma flipped through the ranch's cookbook, its pages stained and dog-eared from years of use. Handwritten notes crowded the margins. Tips for cooking at high altitude, substitutions for hard-to-find ingredients, memories recorded in fading ink. "Add extra flour when clouds gather," she read aloud. "The moisture affects the bread." "That's Mother's handwriting," Luke said, pausing in the kitchen doorway. "She learned to cook the same way you're learning ranch life. One mistake at a time." The morning sun streamed through the windows as the house came alive. Sarah sat at the table, calculating supply needs for the coming month. Lucy mended shirts nearby, her quick needle flashing in the light. The smell of coffee and fresh bread filled the air. "Your mother must have been an extraordinary woman," Emma said, noting another margin note about using willow bark tea for fevers, something she'd learned from Dr. Thompson. "She was." Luke stepped closer, his presence warming the space between them. "Would have liked you all, I think, especially your way of jumping in and making things work." Outside, the ranch hands were starting their day. Matthew's voice carried through the window as he gave instructions. James led a string of horses toward the corral, pausing to tip his hat at Lucy through the window. "The hands are taking bets," Luke mentioned casually, "on which of you ladies will run screaming back to civilization first." Emma raised an eyebrow. "And what did you bet?" "That they're all going to lose." His smile held something more than amusement. "Some people know their worth, no matter what others say." Sarah looked up from her ledgers. "Speaking of worth, these books tell an interesting story. Your father was clever with his investments." "Had to be," Luke replied. Banks weren't friendly to a man who started with nothing but war wounds and dreams. Like they weren't friendly to three women with nothing but skills and determination. Lucy's quiet words carried across the kitchen. A moment of understanding passed between them all. They were more alike than different, the rejected brides and the sons of a man who'd built his dream from scratch. The kitchen door swung open as Matthew entered, bringing the crisp morning air with him. "Emma," Anderson's boy fell off his horse. "Nothing broken, but I'll get my bag." Emma was already moving, her healer's instincts taking over. "I'll ride with you," Luke offered, then added with a grin, to keep the boy from falling for his pretty nurse. Their laughter followed Emma and Luke out the door. Sarah watched them go, a knowing smile playing at her lips. They fit well together. "They do," Matthew agreed, his eyes lingering on Sarah's face. "Seems to be happening a lot around here lately." Lucy ducked her head over her mending, but not before they caught her blush. James chose that moment to appear in the doorway as if drawn by some invisible thread. "Lucy, I've been thinking about that business plan of yours," he said. "The mercantile owner's wife is interested in seeing your work." Lucy's face lit up. "Really? But I haven't even—" "I showed her the sketch I made of your quilt." James ran a hand through his hair, suddenly shy. "Hope you don't mind." The look they shared spoke volumes. Sarah and Matthew exchanged glances, remembering their own moments of growing connection. The day unfolded like a flower, each hour bringing new challenges and small victories. Emma returned triumphant from treating the fallen boy, Luke's proud smile matching her own. Lucy and James bent their heads together over business plans, their hands brushing accidentally as they passed papers back and forth. Sarah and Matthew worked through the accounts, their comfortable silence worth more than words. As evening approached, they gathered around the big kitchen table. Brothers, brides, and a few chosen ranch hands. The cookbook's recipes had produced a hearty meal, made better by shared work and growing affection. "To new beginnings," Matthew proposed, raising his glass. "And to knowing your worth," Emma added softly, her eyes meeting Luke's across the table. Lucy leaned slightly toward James. "To seeing the beauty in unexpected places." "To home," Sarah finished simply, and they all knew she meant more than just the ranch. The cookbook lay open on the counter, its pages ready to collect new memories, new marginal notes, new stories of love growing in fertile soil. Sarah sat alone in Matthew's study, moonlight spilling across the leather-bound ledgers spread before her. The latest account book told a story that made her heart sink, one of mounting debts and dwindling profits. No wonder Matthew's shoulders carried such tension. "Still at it?" Matthew's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway, trail. Dust still clinging to his clothes from a long day's work. "Matthew," she straightened, gesturing to the books. "Why didn't you tell me how bad things were?" He crossed the room slowly, settling into the chair beside her. "Didn't want to burden you with our troubles. You've all had enough disappointments. These aren't just your troubles anymore." Sarah's finger traced a column of worrying numbers. "The bank loan comes due in 3 months, the cattle prices are falling, and this drought sounds about right." His voice held weary acceptance. "Been juggling accounts so the hands get paid, but something's got to give soon." Sarah pulled out a sheet of calculations she'd made. "Not necessarily. Look here. If we restructure the loans, consolidate the debts..." Her education might not have impressed her intended's family, but numbers had always been her friends. Matthew leaned closer, his warmth distracting in the quiet night. "You really think we could make this work?" "We already are." She showed him another page. "Lucy's sewing business is bringing in steady income. Emma's medical skills have saved us fortune in doctors' fees. And I've found several places where we can cut costs without cutting corners." Sarah, the way he said her name made her breath catch. "You're remarkable, you know that?" She blushed, remembering another man who'd called her remarkable, right before deciding she wasn't wealthy enough to marry. "I'm just good with numbers." "No." Matthew's hand covered hers on the ledger. "You're good with everything. The way you've taken on this ranch's problems like they're your own. the way you see solutions where I only saw obstacles. The ranch is worth fighting for. Sarah met his eyes. Your father's legacy, your brother's future, it matters. And your future? His question hung in the air between them. Sarah, I know this isn't the life you planned. If things get worse, then we'll face it together. The words came naturally, surprising them both. Unless you'd rather I didn't. Matthew's response was to lift her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. I'd rather you did exactly what you're doing, making this ranch and me better than we were before you came. A comfortable silence settled over the study. Outside, an owl called softly, and the night wind rustled through the cottonwoods. We should look at the summer grazing contracts tomorrow, Sarah said finally, her hand still warm from his kiss. I think there's room for negotiation. Always business. Matthew smiled, but his eyes held something deeper. Reminds me of my mother. She kept this ranch going through some hard times, always with her head high and her mind working. Tell me about her. Sarah gathered the ledgers, setting them aside. As Matthew spoke of his mother's strength and wisdom, Sarah felt pieces of her own life falling into place. This wasn't the genteel existence she'd imagined when answering a marriage advertisement, but it was real. The problems were real. The work was real, and most importantly, the growing feeling between her and Matthew was real. It's late, Matthew said eventually, though he made no move to leave. You should rest. So should you. Sarah stood, smoothing her skirts. Tomorrow's soon enough to save the ranch. He caught her hand again as she passed. Thank you, Sarah, not just for the books, but for believing in this place, in us. The moonlight painted silver shadows across his features, highlighting the sincerity in his eyes. Sarah felt her heart turn over, knowing that this moment marked a change between them. Some things, she said softly, are worth believing in. The red bandana caught Emma's eye first, soaked through with blood, clutched tight against young Tommy Anderson's shoulder. Luke half carried the ranch hand through the infirmary door, his face tight with worry. Steer caught him with its horn, Luke explained as they helped Tommy onto the examination table. Threw him clean over the fence. Emma was already moving, her hands steady as she gathered supplies. This wasn't a Denver clinic with its gleaming instruments, but she'd learned to work with what she had. Let me see it, Tommy. The wound was deep, ugly, the kind that could turn deadly if infection set in. Emma felt Luke's presence behind her, solid and reassuring, as she assessed the damage. Can you help him? Luke's voice held equal parts trust and concern. Yes. Emma didn't hesitate. But I'll need your help. Hold him still. What followed was a brutal hour of cleaning, stitching, and fighting to keep Tommy's shoulder intact. Luke never wavered, his strong hands gentle as he helped hold the boy steady. The bandana lay forgotten on the floor, its red fabric a testament to how close they'd come to disaster. You're doing fine, Tommy, Emma soothed, her needle flashing in the lamplight. Just a few more stitches. Luke watched her work with growing admiration. I've seen experienced doctors with less steady hands. Dr. Thompson always said skill matters more than fancy equipment. Emma tied off another stitch, her movements precise. Though I wouldn't mind having his surgical kit right about now. Tommy managed a weak smile. Glad you're here, Miss Emma. Last time I got hurt, they had to ride 2 days for the doctor. And you nearly died of infection, Luke added grimly. His eyes met Emma's over Tommy's head. We've lost good men to simple injuries out here. Emma thought of her rejected marriage proposal, of being told her medical knowledge was unsuitable for a proper wife. If she'd married that man, where would Tommy be now? There, she said finally, securing the last bandage. Keep it clean. No riding for at least a week, and come see me twice a day for fresh dressings. Tommy nodded, already looking better as the willow bark tea she'd given him took effect. Luke helped him to the bunkhouse, returning a few minutes later to find Emma cleaning her instruments. That was impressive, he said, picking up the bloodied bandana. Most folks would have panicked. Most folks haven't spent 3 years in Denver's poorest clinic. Emma smiled tiredly. This was actually a quiet day compared to some I've seen. Luke stepped closer, his presence warming the cool evening air. Tell me. So she did. She told him about the miners brought in with crushed limbs, the children sick with fever, the mothers struggling through difficult births. Luke listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed his own practical knowledge of healing. You should have been a doctor, Emma said, surprised by his medical understanding. Maybe in another life. He shrugged. Out here, you learn fast or people die. But watching you work, he touched her hand gently. You have a gift, Emma. Anyone who can't see that is a fool. The evening shadows lengthened as they talked, sharing stories of lives saved and lost. Emma found herself drawing closer to Luke, drawn by his quiet strength and unexpected tenderness. I never thought I'd be grateful for being rejected, she admitted softly. But if I hadn't been, then Tommy might be dead. Luke's hand found hers again, and I wouldn't have found the woman I've been looking for all my life. Emma's heart stuttered at his words. Luke, I know it soon, he said quickly. And I know this isn't the fancy life you probably dreamed of, but watching you today, seeing your strength and skill. Emma, you belong here, with the ranch, with me. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted from the bunkhouse. Miss Emma, Tommy's fever's spiking. They sprang apart, but Luke caught her arm for just a moment. We'll finish this conversation later, Emma smiled, already gathering fresh supplies. Count on it. Lucy found the broken pocket watch on James's desk one quiet afternoon, half hidden, under sketches of her latest dress designs. Its gold case was dented, the crystal cracked, but the craftsmanship was exquisite. Tiny roses were engraved around the edge, each petal detailed with loving care. It was our father's. James's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway of his small office, a fresh stack of drawings in his hands. Carried it through the war, but I dropped it last month. Haven't had the heart to get it fixed. It's beautiful, Lucy said, carefully setting it down, like your drawings. James crossed to his desk, spreading out the new sketches. They showed Lucy's designs from different angles, adding subtle improvements that made her catch her breath. He'd captured every detail of her work, but somehow made it even better. I hope you don't mind, he said uncertainly. I got carried away thinking about how to market your dresses. Lucy traced one of his suggested alterations, a clever way to make a work dress both practical and pretty. Mind? James, these are brilliant. His smile lit up his face. Really, I was worried you'd think I was interfering. No, this is exactly what a partnership should be. She pointed to another sketch. Look how you've solved the problem with the hem I was struggling with. They bent over the drawings together, their heads nearly touching. James's artistic vision complemented Lucy's practical skills perfectly, each making the other's work stronger. The mercantile owner's wife wants to place an order, James said, pulling out a letter, and she's mentioned your work to some friends in Denver. Lucy's heart soared. Already? But we've only just started. Quality speaks for itself. James hesitated, then added softly, just like you do. Their eyes met, held. Lucy felt the now familiar flutter in her chest whenever James looked at her that way. I've been thinking, he continued, picking up his father's watch. Sometimes broken things lead us to better paths. If I hadn't dropped this, I might never have started sketching again. If you hadn't been rejected, I wouldn't be here, Lucy finished. Creating something new with you. James set the watch down and took her hands in his. Lucy, I know I'm not what you expected when you came west. I'm no wealthy rancher or business tycoon. No, she agreed, squeezing his hands. You're an artist who sees beauty in everything, even in a seamstress who wasn't good enough for a proper marriage. Don't! His voice was fierce. Don't ever say you weren't good enough. Those people couldn't see your worth, but I do. I see it in every stitch, every design, every smile. Lucy felt tears threatening. James, let me finish. He drew her closer. I may not be able to offer you a grand house in Denver, but I can offer you a true partnership. In business, in art, in life, if you'll have me. The watch lay forgotten On the desk, as James pulled Lucy into a gentle kiss. When they parted, both were smiling through tears. "Is that a yes?" James whispered. Lucy's answer was to kiss him again, then pull back with a practical gleam in her eye. "On one condition. We fix your father's watch together. I'm good with tiny stitches. Surely that translates to tiny gears." James laughed, the sound pure joy. "See, perfect partners." Outside the office window, the ranch hummed with life. Lucy could hear Emma teaching a ranch hand how to properly bandage a wound, and Sarah discussing cattle prices with Matthew. 3. Women who'd arrived with nothing but broken dreams, now building new lives with men who valued them for exactly who they were. "Partners," Lucy agreed, turning back to James. "Now, show me more of your ideas for that Denver collection." The supply lists grew longer by the day as autumn's golden light gave way to steel-grey skies. Sarah studied the papers spread across the kitchen table, each one a reminder of winter's approaching threats. Food, medicine, warm clothing, everything had to be accounted for. Everything had to last. "These numbers don't add up," she murmured, comparing the lists to their dwindling funds. The bank loans still loomed, and cattle prices kept falling. "We'll make it work," Matthew's voice carried quiet confidence as he joined her at the table. "We always do." But Sarah saw the worry in his eyes, the same worry she'd noticed in all three brothers lately. Winter on the frontier took no prisoners, and this year's preparations were complicated by having 3 extra mouths to feed. Emma burst through the door, her medical bag clutched tight. "The Wilson place sent word. Their youngest has fever. Luke's riding out with me." "Be careful," Sarah called after her friend's retreating form. "Storm's coming." Indeed, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising the first serious snow of the season. Lucy and James huddled by the window, checking their inventory of winter clothing for the hands. "If I work through the night, I can finish the last of the heavy coats," Lucy said, her fingers already calculating stitches. James squeezed her shoulder. "Not alone, you won't. I'll help." The day passed in a flurry of activity. Sarah balanced accounts while Matthew and the hands brought in the last of the hay. Lucy's sewing machine whirred steadily, accompanied by James's quiet humming as he cut fabric. When Emma and Luke hadn't returned by dusk, worry began to creep in. The storm clouds had delivered their promise, thick snow now falling in silent sheets. "They'll have stayed at the Wilson place," Matthew reassured them, but his eyes kept straying to the window. Sarah found him there hours later, still watching. "They're experienced riders," she said softly, touching his arm, "and Emma knows how to handle emergencies. It's not just them I'm worried about." Matthew turned to face her. "Sarah, if this winter's as hard as I fear, I can't guarantee we'll all make it through comfortably. You deserve better than scraping by." "Stop." She pressed her fingers to his lips. "I've had comfortable before. Empty comfort in Boston drawing rooms with people who valued wealth over worth. This is better." His kiss was sudden, fierce, warming her more than any fire could. When they parted, his eyes held both love and determination. "Then we face it together," he said. "All of us." As if summoned by his words, hoofbeats sounded. Outside, Luke and Emma rode into view, snow-covered but triumphant. "The Wilson boy will live," Emma announced as they helped her inside. "Though I might have lost a few fingers to frostbite if Luke hadn't thought to bring extra gloves." Lucy appeared with hot coffee, James close behind with blankets. The kitchen quickly filled with warmth and chatter as they all gathered around the stove. "I've been thinking," Luke said, his hand finding Emma's. "Maybe we should make some things official before winter really sets in." Emma's cheeks flushed. "Luke Blackwood, if that's a proposal, you'll have to do better." "Much better," James agreed, winking at Lucy, "though he has the right idea about timing." Sarah felt Matthew's arms slip around her waist as they watched their family. For that's what they had become. Share this moment of joy in the face of coming hardship. Outside, the storm raged on, but within the ranch house, love and determination burned brighter than any storm could challenge. 3 women who'd arrived as rejected brides had found not just acceptance, but a home worth fighting for. The supply lists still needed attention, the bank loan still loomed, and winter's threats still gathered. But as Sarah looked around at the faces she'd grown to love, she knew they would face it all together, not just as couples, but as a family forged by choice rather than chance. The threatening note appeared on a bitter November morning, slipped under the ranch house door, sometime before dawn. Sarah found it as she went to start breakfast, the crude paper crinkling under her feet. "Leave now while you can," she read aloud, her voice steady despite the chill that ran down her spine. "The Double B belongs to those who can afford to run it proper." Matthew's jaw tightened as he read the note over her shoulder. "Carlton's work, I'd bet my last dollar. His family's been trying to buy us out for years." The banker's son. Sarah remembered the tall, well-dressed man who'd sneered at her in town last week. "He's behind this?" "His father's foreclosed on half the small ranches in the territory." Matthew crumpled the note. "They're used to getting their way." The kitchen filled with familiar morning sounds. Emma preparing her medical supplies, Lucy's sewing machine humming, James reviewing orders for their growing business. But tension hung in the air like smoke. "There's more," Luke said, striding in from his morning rounds. "Found 2 fences cut on the north pasture. Cattle would have scattered if we hadn't caught it early." Emma looked up sharply from her work. "The same pasture where Tommy was hurt." "Nothing accidental about it," Luke confirmed, his hand finding Emma's shoulder. "They're testing us." Lucy set aside her sewing, face pale. "Testing what?" "Our resolve," James answered, moving to stand beside her. "Carlton's bank holds our loan. If we can't make the payment, we'll make it." Sarah's voice carried quiet determination as she pulled out the account books. "Between Lucy's dress orders, Emma's medical work, and the cattle we have left." A commotion outside interrupted her calculations. They rushed to the window to see a group of riders approaching, Carlton at their head, his fine coat a stark contrast to their rough appearance. "Stay inside," Matthew ordered. But Sarah was already moving to stand beside him on the porch. Luke and James flanked them, while Emma and Lucy watched from the doorway. Carlton reined in his horse, his smile cold as winter. "Heard you've taken in some interesting guests, Blackwood. Mighty generous, considering your financial situation." "Our situation is none of your concern," Matthew replied evenly. "Oh, but it is." Carlton produced a paper with a flourish. "When you miss that loan payment, and we all know you will, the Double B will finally have proper owners, unless—" His gaze lingered insultingly on Sarah. "You ladies might be better off finding more suitable arrangements." Luke's hand dropped to his gun belt, but Emma's quiet "no" stopped him. "You're right about one thing." Sarah stepped forward, her voice carrying across the yard. "The Double B deserves proper owners. People who understand that true worth isn't measured in dollars." "Pretty words," Carlton sneered. "Won't keep you warm when winter hits." "No." Emma joined Sarah on the porch. "But family will. Something you wouldn't understand." Lucy completed their line, her hand finding James's. "We're not going anywhere." Carlton's face darkened. "We'll see about that." He wheeled his horse around. "Winter's long in Montana. Accidents happen." They watched the riders disappear into the morning mist. Matthew pulled Sarah close, his heart pounding under her ear. "We should have told you about Carlton sooner," he said. "Given you the choice to leave before what?" Sarah lifted her chin. "Before we fell in love? Before we became family?" "They won't stop," Luke warned, his arm around Emma's waist. "Carlton's used to breaking people." "Then he's never met anyone like us," Emma replied firmly. "We've already been broken once and came back stronger." James nodded, squeezing Lucy's hand. Together. They moved back into the warmth of the kitchen, but something had shifted. The threat was real, but so was their determination. 3 women who'd been deemed too poor, too unsuitable, now stood as the difference between the Double B's survival and its fall. Sarah opened the account books again, her mind already working on solutions. They had love, skill, and determination. Carlton would learn that some things couldn't be bought or broken at any price. The letter from Denver's City Hospital felt heavy in Emma's hands, its crisp paper and official letterhead a stark contrast to the rustic infirmary where she stood. Dr. Thompson's familiar handwriting brought tears to her eyes. "Dearest Emma," she read again, "your work with frontier medicine has reached my ears, and I find myself in need of precisely your skills. The hospital is expanding its women's ward, and I require an assistant who understands both medical science and practical healing." The offer was everything she'd once dreamed of: a real position, a chance to study proper medicine, respect for her abilities. The salary alone would ease the ranch's financial burdens considerably. "Emma?" Luke's voice startled her. She hadn't heard him enter the infirmary. "Tommy's leg is troubling him again." He trailed off, noting her expression and the letter in her hands. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," she said quickly, too quickly. "It's from my old mentor in Denver." Luke crossed the room slowly, as if approaching a spooked horse. "And?" Emma handed him the letter, watching his face as he read. His expression remained carefully neutral, but she saw the tension in his jaw, the slight tremor in his hands. "It's a good opportunity," he said finally, his voice rough. "The kind you deserve." "Luke." "No, listen." He set the letter down, taking her hands in his. "I've watched you work miracles here with nothing but determination and basic supplies. In a real hospital with proper equipment," his thumbs traced circles on her palms, "you could help so many people." Emma pulled away, moving to the window. Outside, ranch life continued. Sarah and Matthew discussing cattle sales, Lucy and James loading a wagon with dress orders for town. More than colleagues or friends now, they were family. "I help people here," she said softly. "But you could do more." Luke's voice held pain and pride in equal measure. "Emma, I won't be the reason you give up your dreams." She turned to face him. "And what if my dreams have changed?" The infirmary door opened before Luke could respond. One of the younger hands burst in, breathless. "Mr. Carlton's men, they're threatening to stampede the herd." Luke was moving, instantly, but Emma caught his arm. "This conversation isn't finished." "Later," he promised, already reaching for his gun belt. "Stay safe." Emma watched him ride out with the other hands, her heart torn. The letter seemed to mock her from the table, offering everything she'd once wanted. But standing in this small infirmary, remembering every life she'd touched here, Sarah found her there an hour later, still staring at the letter. "Luke told me," her friend said softly, "while they were riding out." "What would you do?" Emma asked. "If you had the chance to be everything you trained for?" Sarah considered carefully. I think sometimes we don't recognize our dreams until they're right in front of us, wearing dusty boots and loving us exactly as we are." Emma smiled despite her tears. "When did you get so wise?" "About the time I realized that rejected brides make the strongest wives." Sarah squeezed her hand. "Whatever you decide, we're with you." The afternoon passed in tense waiting. When Luke finally returned, covered in dust but triumphant, Emma was waiting with bandages and liniment for the inevitable scrapes. "Carlton's men scattered when we showed up armed," he reported as she tended a cut on his arm. "But they'll be back." Emma's fingers stilled on his skin. "I'm not going to Denver." Luke's breath caught. "Emma, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." She met his eyes steadily. "My place is here. Not because of you, though loving you is part of it, but because every life I save here, every child I help birth, every fever I break, they matter more than a fancy title or a proper hospital." "You're sure?" His voice was hoarse with emotion. Emma's answer was to tear Dr. Thompson's letter in half. "I've never been more sure of anything." Luke pulled her into a fierce kiss, tasting of dust and devotion. When they parted, his smile held all the promise she'd ever need. "Although," she added with a twinkle in her eye, "I wouldn't say no to some new medical supplies if you're feeling generous." His laughter filled the infirmary, chasing away the last of her doubts. Sometimes, she realized, the grandest dreams came true in the smallest places. Sarah found the old newspaper clipping tucked between the pages of the ranch's original deed book. The yellowed paper crackled as she carefully unfolded it, the headline still bold despite its age. Local hero returns. Wounded veteran builds ranch empire from nothing. The photograph showed a younger version of the man she recognized from portraits around the house. Matthew's father standing proud despite the crutch under his arm. Beside him stood a young boy, barely 10, with Matthew's same determined expression. I'd forgotten about that article. Matthew's voice came softly from the study doorway. 1866, right after father bought this land. Sarah looked up, noting the shadows in his eyes. He was wounded in the war. Sharpshooter's bullet. Nearly lost the leg. Matthew crossed to her desk, touching the photograph gently. Banks wouldn't lend to a crippled veteran. Said he'd never manage a working ranch, but he proved them wrong. We all did. Matthew smiled slightly. Mother kept books like you do. Luke learned doctor's skills to help with father's leg. James, he chuckled. James designed special stirrups so father could still ride. Sarah studied the clipping more closely, reading between the lines. That's why Carlton's threats hit so hard. This isn't just land to you. It's everything father believed. In everything he taught us about judging character over circumstances. Matthew's hand found hers. Why do you think we understood about you three right away? The pieces clicked into place. Why 3 successful ranching brothers had so readily taken in 3 rejected brides, why they valued skill and determination over social standing. Your father, Sarah said slowly, he built all this while everyone said he couldn't. Just like 3 talented women are helping us save it while everyone says we can't. Matthew pulled another paper from the deed book, a banknote with Carlton's father's signature. He tried to foreclose on father back then too, said a crippled man had no business running a ranch this size. Sarah's accountant's mind raced. That's why you won't sell, even with the loan due. This isn't about pride. It's about proving that worth isn't measured by other people's expectations. Matthew's voice roughened. Father died believing his sons would keep his dream alive. That the Double B would always be a place where people were judged by their character, not their circumstances. Standing, Sarah moved to the window. The ranch spread out before her, the corrals where Emma tended injured horses, the workshop where Lucy and James created their designs, the bunkhouse full of loyal hands who'd grown up believing in the Blackwood way. Show me, she said suddenly. Show you what? Everything, the whole ranch. I've been managing the books, but I want to understand what we're really fighting for. Matthew's smile bloomed slow and warm. Saddle up then. It's quite a story. They spent the afternoon riding the boundaries of the Double B. At each stop, Matthew shared another piece of his father's legacy. The north pasture where they'd proved winter grazing could work. The stream where James had designed an irrigation system. The rise where they'd fought off rustlers during the drought of 73. And here, Matthew reined in beside a small fenced garden, is where Mother grew herbs for Luke's medical work. Said if banks wouldn't fund us, we'd heal ourselves. Sarah dismounted, touching the weathered fence posts. Your parents built something remarkable. They did. Matthew joined her, his hand finding the small of her back. And now you're helping us keep it alive. The way you've mastered these books, found new ways to make the ranch profitable. Matthew, Sarah turned to face him. I need you to know something. When I came west, I thought I was looking for security, for a comfortable life. But this, neither what your family built, what we're all building together now, it's so much more. His kiss tasted of sunshine and promises. When they parted, his eyes held a certainty that warmed her through. Marry me, he said simply. Help me keep building this dream. Sarah's answer was in her smile, in her tears, in the way she fit perfectly against him. Behind them, the Double B stretched endless and beautiful, a legacy of love and determination waiting to be continued. Lucy smoothed the silk of her latest creation, a commissioned dress that would have turned heads even in Denver's finest shops. The wife of Silver Creek's bank manager had ordered it specifically for the winter social, wanting something that would show those Carlton snobs what local talent can do. James's sketch of the design hung beside her work table, his artistic vision perfectly translated into fabric and thread. He'd captured every detail, from the intricate bustle to the delicate beading at the collar. "It's perfect," James said from the doorway, his eyes shining with pride, "though not as perfect as the seamstress." Lucy blushed, still unused to such open admiration. "Your design made it possible. I never would have attempted something this elaborate without your drawings." "Our first high society commission," James crossed to examine the dress closer, "and certainly not our last, from what I hear in town." Indeed, their reputation had grown steadily. What had started as simple repairs had blossomed into a thriving business, with orders coming in from as far as Denver. Even Carlton's sister had been overheard admiring Lucy's work, though she'd never admit it openly. The mercantile owners. "Wife says we could open our own shop in town," Lucy said carefully, watching James's reaction. "She's offered to rent us the old millinery space." James's smile widened. "I know. I've already been measuring it for display cases." He pulled out his notebook, showing her sketches of a beautifully arranged storefront. "I thought we could put your finest pieces in the window, with a workroom in back." "You've been planning this." Lucy's heart skipped at his thoughtfulness. "Since the day you agreed to be my partner." He took her hands in his. "In everything." The moment was interrupted by Sarah's excited call from the main house. They hurried over to find the kitchen buzzing with activity. Emma was wrapping Matthew's hand, apparently wounded, while defending the north fence from more of Carlton's mischief, while Sarah read from a letter. "The cattle contract came through," she announced. "The army wants our entire spring herd, at premium prices. That'll more than cover the loan," Matthew added, wincing as Emma tightened his bandage. "And leave enough to expand the dress business," James said meaningfully, squeezing Lucy's hand. Luke leaned against the doorframe, grinning. "Looks like Carlton's about to learn that the Double B's more resourceful than he thought." "Speaking of resources," Lucy gathered her courage, "James and I have news." She explained about the shop. "In town, watching their families' faces light up with understanding and support." "It's perfect timing," Sarah said. "With the army contract secured, we can help with the initial costs." "No need," James replied proudly. "We've saved enough from our orders. This is our dream to build." Lucy felt tears threatening. From rejected bride to successful businesswoman, all because one man had seen beyond her circumstances to her true worth. "There's more," James continued. He reached into his vest pocket, withdrawing a small box. "I've been waiting for the right moment." The kitchen fell silent as James knelt before her. Inside the box lay a ring, elegant in its simplicity, with a pattern of tiny flowers engraved around the band. Flowers that matched his sketches, her embroidery, their shared vision of beauty. "Lucy Thomas." His voice trembled slightly. "You've made every dream I had more beautiful than I imagined. Marry me, be my partner in everything, forever." "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes." The kitchen erupted in cheers and congratulations. Emma and Sarah hugged her, while the brothers clapped James on the back. Through her happy tears, Lucy saw her dress for the banker's wife hanging in the workroom. Proof that talent and determination could overcome any rejection. "Two down, one to go," Luke murmured to Emma, who blushed prettily. Later, as James showed Lucy more detailed plans for their shop, she marveled at how far they'd come. 3 brides deemed too poor had found riches beyond measure, in love, in family, in the chance to build something lasting. "What are you thinking?" James asked softly. Lucy touched the ring on her finger, its engraved flowers promising a future full of shared creations. That sometimes the most beautiful designs come from unexpected patterns. The broken lantern lay in the snow, its glass shattered, oil frozen. One more casualty of the storm that had descended on the Double B without warning. Sarah clutched it tightly despite its uselessness, straining to see through the whiteout conditions. "Matthew!" Her voice was lost in the howling wind. He'd gone to check the nearest cattle shelter hours ago before the storm turned violent. Now the world had disappeared into a blur of white and cold. Inside the ranch house, Emma paced by the window, her medical bag ready. Luke had ridden out to the far pasture with James, planning to bring in any strays before the weather turned. None of them had expected the storm to hit so fast, so hard. "They know this land," Lucy said from her position by the fire, though her hands trembled as she worked on another heavy blanket. "They'll find shelter." A pounding at the door made them all jump. Tommy burst in, snow coating his clothes. "Miss Emma, one of Carlton's men. Found him half frozen by the creek. Says there's others out there." Emma was moving before he finished speaking. "Where?" "Emma, no." Sarah grabbed her friend's arm. "It's too dangerous. They'll die without help." Emma's voice held steel. "Carlton's. Men or not, I took an oath." Lucy stood, resolution replacing fear. "I'll get more blankets, heat water for tea." Another figure appeared in the doorway. Carlton's foreman, Roberts, looking nothing like his usual arrogant self. "Please," he said, his voice rough. "My boys, we were setting fences when the storm hit." Sarah saw Emma and Lucy exchange glances. These were the same men who'd threatened them, cut their fences, tried to drive them away. But now, how many? Emma asked, already packing additional supplies. 4, including the boss himself. The irony might have been amusing if lives weren't at stake. Sarah made a decision. "Tommy, help Emma and Roberts. Lucy, keep the home fires burning. I'm going to find Matthew." "Sarah," both women protested. "I know his route, and we can't wait for the storm to break." She pulled on Matthew's spare coat. "Carlton's men aren't the only ones out there." The next hours passed in a blur of white snow and desperate searching. Emma and Tommy found 2 of Carlton's men huddled in a shallow cave. Sarah tracked Matthew to the cattle shelter, where he'd managed to save most of the herd. Luke and James had holed up in the line shack with Carlton himself, a fact that would have been awkward if everyone wasn't so focused on survival. The broken lantern served as a beacon, its metal catching what little light penetrated the storm. One by one, they made their way back to the ranch house, guided by Lucy's unwavering vigil at the window. Dawn broke to find them all crowded in the kitchen. Carlton's men sat wrapped in Lucy's blankets, accepting Emma's ministrations and hot tea with subdued gratitude. The brothers, snow-crusted and exhausted, stood guard over their unexpected guests. "Why?" Carlton finally asked, looking at Emma as she bandaged his frost-bitten hands. "After everything we did." "Because that's who they are," Matthew answered. For her, his arm around Sarah. "Who we all are." "The Double B looks after its own," Luke added, helping Emma with her supplies. "And in a storm like this, everyone's our own." James nodded, holding Lucy close. "Even people who don't know their true worth yet." Carlton looked around the warm kitchen, seeing perhaps for the first time what his money couldn't buy. Strength. Compassion. The kind of love that drove people out into storms to save their enemies. "I've been a fool," he said quietly. "Yes," Sarah agreed, but kindly, though not as big a fool as those who rejected 3 talented women for being too poor. The storm raged on outside, but inside the ranch house, something shifted. Old enmities, melted like snow in spring, replaced by a deeper understanding. They were all survivors now, bound together by a night when love proved stronger than hatred, and mercy more powerful than pride. The broken lantern found a place of honor on the mantle, a reminder that sometimes light shines brightest when the darkness seems complete. 3 simple gold rings lay nestled in their boxes on the kitchen table, catching the first light of spring dawn. Each was distinct. Sarah's featured a delicate pattern of numbers and curves that Matthew had specially designed. Emma's bore a careful engraving of healing herbs, and Lucy's showcased the same flower motif that graced her and James's best work. "They're perfect," Luke said, examining his choice for Emma one last time. Though Matthew and James had already proposed, Luke had convinced them to wait for a proper ceremony. All 3 brides, all 3 brothers, together. The winter's trials had transformed the Double B. Carlton had withdrawn his threats and renegotiated the loan on fair terms. The army contract promised a prosperous year ahead. Lucy and James's shop in town was nearly ready to open, and Emma's reputation as a healer had spread throughout the territory. Sarah walked into the kitchen, fresh from reviewing the morning's accounts. The ranch's ledgers now showed a healthy profit, a far cry from the desperate situation she'd discovered months ago. "The hands are gathering," she announced, then stopped short at the sight of the rings. "Luke, those were supposed to be a secret. Can't hide anything in this family," he grinned, quickly closing the boxes. "Is everything ready?" Sarah nodded. After the winter storm, the entire ranch had conspired to create this moment. Even Carlton had contributed, sending 3 fine carriages to transport the brides to the special spot the brothers had chosen. The morning unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Emma was called away on a supposed medical emergency. Lucy needed to check on fabric deliveries. Sarah had urgent business in town. Each bride departed separately, each accompanied by ranch hands who could barely contain their excited grins. The brothers waited at their father's favorite viewpoint, a rise overlooking the entire ranch, where the old veteran had first dreamed of building something lasting. They'd spent weeks preparing the spot, creating a bower of early spring flowers, and Lucy's finest decorative work. One by one, the carriages arrived. Sarah first, then Emma, finally Lucy, each bride stepping down to find the Double B's entire extended family waiting. Ranch hands and their families, townspeople who'd come to respect the women's skills. Even Carlton and his men stood witness. Matthew stepped forward first, taking Sarah's hands in his. Though they were already promised, his voice shook with emotion. "Sarah Mitchell, you arrived with nothing but your skills and determination. You helped save this ranch, not just with your clever mind, but with your boundless heart. Marry me properly in front of all these witnesses." Her yes was firm and clear, like the numbers she loved so well. Luke approached Emma next, still in her medical apron, looking stunned at the gathering. "Emma Barrett, they said you weren't suitable for marriage because you cared more for healing than hosting. They were right about one thing. You care more for helping others than for appearances. That's just one of the countless reasons I love you. Be my wife?" Emma's tears fell freely as she accepted both ring and proposal. James was last, leading Lucy to where her needlework decorated the bower. "Lucy Thomas, they called you just a seamstress, but they couldn't see how you weave beauty and love into everything you touch. You've mended more than clothes here. You've helped mend hearts, including mine. Marry me?" Lucy's joyful acceptance wrapped up the perfect moment. The old ranch hand who'd known the brothers since boyhood stepped forward, holding up well-worn Bible. "No sense waiting," he said gruffly, though his eyes shone. "Got my preacher's license just for today." And so, under the spring sky, with the Double B spread out below them like a promise, 3 couples who'd found each other against all odds joined their lives together. Each ring slipped onto its intended finger represented not just love, but triumph, over rejection, over hardship, over every voice that had said they weren't enough. As the last "I do" faded into joyful celebration, Sarah looked out over the ranch that had become her true home. "They said we were too poor to marry," she whispered. "They didn't know," Matthew replied, holding her close, "that love makes everyone rich." The community quilt grew piece by piece, each square telling its own story. Lucy had started the project as a simple wedding decoration, but it had grown into something more, a testament to how 3 rejected brides had woven themselves into the fabric of Silver Creek. The banker's wife contributed silk from her finest dress, the one Lucy had made that turned so many heads. Ranch hands' families added sturdy cotton squares, some decorated with Emma's healing herbs, others with Sarah's precise numerical patterns. Even Carlton's sister had sent an elegant piece of brocade. Who would have thought? Emma mused, watching the women of Silver Creek gather in the ranch house parlor to sew. That being unsuitable would lead to this. Sarah looked up from where she was organizing the quilting squares. Unsuitable for them. Perfect for here, The parlor buzzed with activity and conversation. The mercantile owner's wife was discussing expansion plans with Lucy, their shop's success having brought new business to town. Emma's impromptu clinic had attracted a young doctor looking to establish a proper practice, with her as his partner. Sarah's financial acumen had several ranchers seeking her advice. "The Wilsons want you to look at their books," Matthew said, pausing in the doorway to admire the gathering. "Seems your reputation for saving troubled ranches is spreading." "Our reputation," Sarah corrected, squeezing his hand. The ring on her finger caught the light, its pattern of numbers gleaming. Letters had arrived that morning from the families who had rejected them. Word of their success had traveled far, carrying hints of regret and attempt at reconciliation. The brides had read them together, then quietly fed them to the fire. "Some bridges," Lucy had said, watching the papers burn, "are better left uncrossed." Now she sat with James, their heads bent together over designs for wedding clothes. His artistic vision and her skillful execution had created styles that blended frontier practicality with elegant beauty. Orders had come from as far as San Francisco. Luke entered, carrying more quilting supplies, pausing to drop a kiss on Emma's head. The easy affection between them made several women sigh appreciatively. The story of how she'd saved Carlton's men during the winter storm had become local legend. "Miss Emma," young Tommy called from outside, "Baker's boy took a fall from the apple tree." Emma rose smoothly, medical bag already in hand. "Duty calls. Save me some quilting." "Always," Luke promised, his proud smile following her out. The quilt grew as the day progressed, each stitch representing a connection forged, a friendship built, a community strengthened. Women who had once looked askance at the poor brides now sought their company and counsel. "Do you remember," Lucy asked softly, showing James a particularly beautiful square, "when we thought being rejected was the worst thing that could happen to us? Turned out to be the best," he replied, adding a sketch of the quilt's final design to their growing portfolio. As evening approached, the women gathered around to admire their work. The quilt told the story of the Double B and the 3 brides who had helped it flourish. Every square a memory, every pattern a piece of their journey. "It's not just a wedding quilt anymore," the minister's wife observed. "It's the story of Silver Creek itself." Sarah thought of their arrival months ago, 3 women with nothing but broken dreams and determination. Now they stood surrounded by friends, their skills respected, their love stories celebrated. "The best stories," she said, touching a square that showed the ranch house in winter, "are the ones we write ourselves." The final square was special. 3 sets of interlocked rings, symbolizing not just the coming weddings, but the unbreakable bonds between the brides who had become sisters, the brothers who had seen their true worth, and the community that had learned to value substance over circumstance. As the quilting party wound down, Matthew found Sarah by the window. "Happy?" She looked at their gathered friends, at Emma teaching young girls about medicinal plants, at Lucy and James showing their designs to admirers. "More than I ever dreamed possible." The quilt lay finished on the table, ready to witness 3 weddings that would celebrate not just love, but the triumph of finding where you truly belong. The family portrait hung proudly in the Double B's main hall, capturing a moment 1 year after the triple wedding. 6 faces smiled from the frame, 3 brothers and 3 brides who had become so much more than anyone expected. Sarah sat at Matthew's right hand, account books open before them, showing the ranch's newfound prosperity. Her financial wisdom had not only saved the Double B, but helped other struggling ranches survive. The territory's banks now sought her advice on agricultural investments. Emma stood beside Luke, her medical bag replaced with a doctor's case. The clinic she'd founded with her young partner served 3 counties, and her techniques for frontier medicine were being studied back east. Luke's proud smile showed every time he introduced her as "my wife, the doctor." Lucy and James completed the portrait, surrounded by sketches and fabric samples. Their shop had become Silver Creek's pride, drawing customers from Denver society. Their designs, blending practicality with beauty, graced the finest houses in the territory. "Best investment we ever made," Matthew often said, taking in 3 unsuitable brides. The ranch had flourished beyond anyone's dreams. Carlton, now a friend and business partner, admitted that his father had been wrong about judging worth by wealth alone. The Double B stood as proof that success came in many forms. Spring brought new beginnings. Emma announced she was expecting, prompting tears and celebrations. Lucy and James expanded their shop to include a school for young seamstresses. Sarah's financial consultancy grew alongside her role as ranch manager. Looking at this portrait, Sarah mused one evening. The whole family gathered in the parlor. "I hardly recognize those 3 frightened women who arrived with rejection letters." "I do," Matthew said softly. "I see their strength, their determination. We just gave it room to grow." The community quilt draped across the back of the settee, its squares telling their story. New squares had been added for Emma's baby, Lucy's, school, Sarah's successes. The Double B had become more than a ranch. It was a symbol of what love and acceptance could build. Luke raised his glass. "To the women who proved that being unsuitable for some makes you perfect for others." James finished, squeezing Lucy's hand. Outside, the Montana sunset painted the sky in colors as rich as their shared dreams. The land that had once seemed like exile had become their kingdom, built on love, determination, and the courage to see worth beyond wealth. Emma touched her growing belly. "Our children will never doubt their value, or their place in the world," Lucy added. Sarah looked around at her family. Not just the brothers and brides, but the ranch hands who had become family, the townspeople who had become friends, the community that had learned to see with new eyes. "They said we were too poor to marry," she said, echoing words from that first difficult day. "They never understood that real riches aren't counted in dollars. They're counted in love," Matthew agreed, his arms strong around her shoulders. "In healing," Luke added, kissing Emma's cheek. "In beauty," James finished, sharing a look with Lucy. The portrait watched over them all, 6 faces full of joy, 3 couples who had found each other against all odds. But the real masterpiece was the life they'd built together. A ranch, saved, a community strengthened, and love that proved worth isn't measured in gold, but in the richness of the heart. "To the Double B," they toasted together, "where everyone's worth shines true." Outside, spring flowers bloomed on the prairie, as wild and beautiful as 3 brides who had turned rejection into triumph. The sun set on another day at the ranch, but their story would be told for generations of how love, determination, and believing in your own worth could build something greater than anyone imagined. The end.